It is a cycle of the same spread across time and space. We are experiencing it on a different timelines. By P.B. Flower. Hello everyone, this is author P.B. Flower. My published series All Kaal None is available as ebook and paperback on Amazon.com and free to read as ebook with Kindle Unlimited subscription. Put your phone to use and read it. Now for today's topic. Time linearity. To understand this concept, we need to first define what is time. Time, as per me, is a concept we came up with, we as humans, to quantify, measure, change. But the speed at which we measure is constant. It is a predetermined set of rules we came up with by observing and recognizing patterns like sunrise, sunset, change of season, etc. How does internet define time? Let's read it. Time is continuous sequence of existence and events that occurs in an apparently irreversible succession from the past through the present into the future. It is a component quantity of various measurements used to sequence events, to compare the duration of events or the intervals between them, and to quantify rates of change of quantities in material reality or in conscious experience. Time is often referred to as fourth dimension, along with three spatial dimensions, which is height, width, and depth. So, of course, the internet definition is very elaborate and it covers all bases. Now, as per physics, time is progression of events from past into future. Time moves only in one direction, forward, not backward. But if you notice, the physics definition does not account for the present moment. And in my series All Kaal None, I have theorized that it is all but memory, even time. And surprisingly, scientists also believe that. Stress on the word believe, because in science, it has to be theorized, experimented, and proved for it to be a scientific fact. Now, since time has been categorized as dimension, it is measurable by us humans. No one but the society we live in cares for time. The tree doesn't care for time. The animals don't care for time. I mean, it doesn't mean anything to them. But to us, it does, because we see the progression. We have noticed the progression. So there is time. There is change happening in the universe, but it is not dimensional or being measured by anyone other than just humans. We are the ones measuring it. If you check out the definition of dimension in terms of physics or plain English, it is based on coordinates, which simply means alignment. Everything has to align perfectly, and thus it is measurable and definable and computable. But in space, these dimensions don't exist unless you come across an object. Even then, it is us who want to measure and align, because dimension is associated with form or shape. So how the heck is time a dimension then, right? Well, because we are measuring it in a scalar quantity, a fundamental quantity, because our other dimensions are dependent on it. It can be paired with other measurable quantities to derive concepts that matter to us, like speed. If you seriously go deep in it, you will see it is no more insane than a loony locked up in a psych ward babbling stuff, or these gurus talking about intangible things like awareness, nothingness, realization, knowledge, and other stuff. It is all the same. It's all theories. Now, these concepts have been organized and coordinated well in science, time and other related things that we have calculated using time to make sense, because it is all interdependent. Loss of one dimension will render the others useless, or loss of memory itself. If memory goes away, dimension and stuff have no meaning. The ability to store or recollect goes away. There is no past or future. Present is already past by the time we say the word present, because we believe in time linearity. Let me read something interesting from the internet to make sense. Tom Minderell, I don't know if I'm saying the last name right or not, but he had explained that linear time means moving from the past into the future in a straight line, like dominoes knocking over dominoes. There is a sequence that moves in one direction. Humans think we can't change the past to visit the time that has passed, because we live according to linear time. So that's what he theorized. Now, in my series, I have theorized that time is not linear, but I have never put it in words like that. All I did is actioned it out through the characters that I have in there. Especially my main character, who is an engineered being, can change the perception of flow of time. He can vibrate differently to his advantage. He can experience flow of events faster or slower than others around him. And that is time being nonlinear. He can also remove the dimension, time, or other dimensions altogether by witnessing creation as one event, not two, or progressive or linear, but as it is held between all and none, the time, or anything for that matter. And that is why I have named my series All Kaal None, because time is relevant in comparison to all or none or stuff in between. It only makes sense with other dimensions. It is here to calculate other concepts so that we can measure, quantify, and predict. There are two metaphysical philosophies when it comes to time. A, that time is passing and what is future will be present and be the past. Second, that there is no such distinction between the passage of time, meaning there is no past, no present, or future. Therefore, one theory is dynamic and the other one is static. Basically, it's both here and there, everywhere. As per pure physics, it is not possible to define time in a way which is independent from events. And in my series, when the main character switches this his frequency to vibrate differently, the human with him realizes that time has stopped, or it has frozen, or moving slowly. That is how it appears to her. But defying the logic of physics, I have written that it is just a perception. It is just an experience, a memory. And in my past, present, and future podcast, I have said that when we are happy, time passes quickly, and when we are sad, it doesn't seem to go by fast. But it is all what we felt, how our senses recorded the events around us. It was just a perception. If you want to go ahead and check out an article by Heather Dyke on Rutledge Encyclopedia of Philosophy, you can understand this better. And I will leave a description in the link in the description box. Therefore, whatever I have written about the passage of time in my series is subjective. It's relative. Now let's talk about theory of relativity, since time is relative. Einstein had some interesting theory on speed of light and passage of time. And it baffles me because time is a factor when calculating the speed of light. So, anywho, in simplest terms, Einstein had said that any object moves following the shortest distance between 2 points in time and space, like straight line. So when you throw an object, when you hurl an object, when you drop an object, or when energy is reflected from an object, like light, the path that anything, that object, whatever, is being hurled, dropped, or I don't know, thrown, always chooses to go in a straight line. And he also said, Einstein, that the path that all the celestial objects follow in space is due to gravity of another celestial body dipping or curving that straight line. Because as such, if Earth was on its own and not being impacted by any other gravitational object around it, it would be going straight. God knows where, but going straight. So these planets, they orbit or move in an elliptical path because of the strongest gravitational object near them, and not in a straight line as they so aim to do. And this is true for energy also, as per Einstein. So when we look at the night sky, twinkling of light that we see reflecting the star, it could be at a very different point than us looking at it at the source, straight at the source. So we might think that, okay, star is here and I'm looking at it, the light, whatever's coming, I'm standing here and looking at it. I'm not looking at the straight line. No, the star actually could be over here, and the light that it is reflecting is being deflected by all these gravitational objects, and so that's why I can see it here. And it appears to me in a straight line, but it's not. So that's what his theory was, Einstein's theory. And Einstein is my friend when it comes to time and gravity, because he skirted beautifully between physics and metaphysics with that theory. And that's why it's a theory. He said, even time bends with gravity, not just light and objects. So if you are in space, time on Earth would be slower by that theory, because it is on a different frequency. Or even if you are at a higher elevation, like on a mountain, the time on surface would be different. It'll be slower. And that is exactly what I have theorized with my main character. He can oscillate between different frequencies to experience time passage differently. If you create a vacuum on Earth's surface, your time inside that vacuum will flow differently due to the absence of gravity. And it is possible, but not perhaps for us humans to experience due to our short span of life and the physical drawbacks, the combination of those. We can theorize and memorize like Einstein did, but not experience and store that as memory. But it is memory nonetheless. Theory or experience. Now in Upanishad, there is a heavy inclination on metaphysics. In fact, it has perfect calculation of the speed of light even before these modern scientists did it. And I have put it in my series, how the calculation was done and the units that were used in Upanishad. Because my main character can move and switch to that frequency where he can move faster than the speed of light. And it is jaw-dropping thing for us humans, but only because we cannot break the barrier described by Einstein, which is the barrier of gravity with respect to time and space. And I have gone as far as theorizing that when life force, check out my Life Force podcast, is about to exit our body before the actual death or clinical death, not clinical death actually, the actual death, there is a copy of memory that takes place from the cellular level, from the kernel level onto the life force, which is energy. And that makes us experience our life all over again, but at different frequency. However, time may be moving normally for whoever is watching us die. It perhaps moves slowly for us, for the one dying, because we are reliving all those experiences that are being copied on the life force as it is exiting. I'll read an excerpt from my book to shed some light on what I just said. This is how it goes. Death is the discontinuation of suffering. Suffering is experiencing the overload of memory that comes with processing the endless feed from the mind network. So a person who has amassed a lifetime of memory the moment of death is infinite for them because they relive their entire life right before dying. Time moves at a languid pace for them, unlike a child that dies at birth. It almost has no memory. The moment of death for them is not finite. I'm sorry, my cat. Anyway. So I have put this here because one of the characters in my series, she kills all her newborns at birth by drowning them, and she has a purpose behind it. But her husband, who is human, is appalled by this act of hers, and he finally stops her when she's about to drown their 8th child. He sits through all 7 deaths, but because he had promised her that he would never question her. But by the time she was about to drown the 8th child, his patience was gone. So anyway, because him being a human, he cannot accept anything other than what he knows. And to us humans, killing is bad, especially, killing a child. Even some believe that abortion is bad. So because truth to us is what we know, what we believe is right, not essentially what could be. We are told or conditioned into believing certain things as truth or what we believe should be, and all from the knowledge. Anything else is unacceptable. There is this concept of middle way dominance in my series. And it is an interesting celestial entity that defies gravity and time to take the shortest route from point A to point B in a linear fashion. But I don't suppose people who read my book understood that concept. Many have read my book actually, and they have missed out on its depth, which is fine because my book spans across several genres. And my female friends, they skip through everything except for the romance part, and some skip through the mythological part and, only focus on the science fiction part. I mean, it just depends on what your inclination is, because it is a sci-fi, mythological, fantasy, fiction series. Another great writer and best-selling author understood the mythological and Upanishad part pretty well. He got the whole concept very well. And he also understood the genus surplus that I have in there. And many others thought it was just pure science fiction fantasy with alien creatures. And none of them are wrong. But I was discussing with my husband, and we came up with an interesting theory that perhaps a computer programmer or a philosopher who understands human emotions and relationships will get the several dimensions my book attempts to cover. Now, I want to talk about another concept in my series, which is associated with time and space, and that is the concept of parallel timeline. And it is also written very differently in my series, and this falls under quantum theory in physics. I tried to visualize this parallel timeline idea by modeling around the belief that time is linear and that energy can neither be created nor destroyed. So I have used these concepts to model the parallel timeline. So at a matter and energy level, the combinations are finite. The combination of how many matters can come to be, or probability can be calculated. But the space in which this exists is infinite. We have not known the boundaries of our universe yet. And therefore, possibility of multiple timelines is probable. Science has proved, with however they prove, that every atom is made of finite things: electrons, protons, neutrons, and even the anti-version of those, because they have come up with the antimatter concept. So if the combination of these can be calculated, because every matter is made of different numbers of electron, proton, and neutrons within them. So the combination of these can be calculated to come up with how many matters there could be, theorizing the probability of what all may exist. And so no matter what you create, it will repeat itself at some point, coming back to the things that had already come to exist. And so it will repeat. And someone explained this concept by shuffling of a deck of cards. So if you keep shuffling, a pattern will set in. And the sequence in which the cards come to be will repeat if you keep going, if you keep doing it. And that is what parallel timeline is. It is a combination that would come to be if it keeps going. And in my series, I have said that time is linear. So we make choices. Okay, when we come to be and time is going linear, we make choices in our life that switches us over to another parallel. And so we are here, we decide, oh gosh, I'm not going to study anymore. I'm not going to go to college. We switch the parallel. And then, oh, I'm going to get into this business. We switch the parallel. So we essentially keep killing other parallels and keep switching ourselves onto another parallel timeline. But since we are physical, we can't meet ourselves from another timeline because we keep moving forward. Time is linear. It's just moving forward. There's no way to go backwards. That's how I have theorized. So we essentially end a probable parallel by choosing differently. So it is our choices that is spawning off new parallels. You can't go back in time and fix it. So because I don't believe in the theory of grandfather paradox, where you can go back in time and kill your ancestors or kill your younger self or kill your future self, you know. And that's the reason in my series, this main character exists in parallel timelines, but it is still on a linear scale. And if you read my book, it will appear that he is reincarnating. Well, in conclusion, time is a concept to amuse us. It is amusing to read and conceptualize all these theories around time, which is tangible because we have instruments telling us that. Otherwise, it does not exist. If there was no clock, no phone, no memory, time doesn't exist. Well, thank you for listening. This is author PB Flower signing off. Until next time. Bye-bye.